German military engineer, vanished in 1945, 79 years later. His underground facility was uncovered. March 17, 2024. The Harz Mountains, Lower Saxony, Germany. Construction workers from the Müller and Sons Development Corporation break ground on what should be a routine geothermal heating installation for a new residential complex. The drilling rig penetrates 12 meters into the limestone bedrock when the bit suddenly drops through empty space. The foreman, Klaus Bergman, age 53, 27 years of experience, recognizes the sound immediately. They've hit a void. The construction site transforms into an archaeological zone. Ground-penetrating radar reveals a network of tunnels extending 42 meters beneath the surface, covering approximately 800 square meters. The structural integrity scans show reinforced concrete walls, steel support beams, and a ventilation system that shouldn't exist. Not here, not in official records. Dr. Sarah Mendelssohn from the Institute for Contemporary History in Munich arrives at 1430 hours. She spent 2 decades investigating Nazi-era infrastructure. She's mapped bunkers across Germany, Austria, and Poland. But what she sees on the radar printouts makes her hands shake. The tunnel configuration matches classified Wehrmacht engineering specifications from 1944. Document reference: HBAU/We 442K7. A design that appears in only 6 locations across former Nazi territory, all of them officially accounted for, until now. The excavation begins on March 19th. Industrial drilling equipment removes the topsoil carefully, archaeologically. At 14 meters depth, they breach the ceiling of the main tunnel. Lights illuminate a corridor 3 meters wide, reinforced with I-beams stamped with the manufacturer's mark, Krupp Stahl, 1944. The concrete walls show no water damage despite 79 years underground. The ventilation shafts still draw air. In the primary chamber, 28 meters below ground level, investigators find what transforms this from archaeological curiosity to historical bombshell. A reinforced steel door, 2.4 meters high, secured with a mechanical lock system bearing serial number TK884421W behind it. An office. A desk made from oak. A chair, filing cabinets containing water-damaged but legible documents. And on the desk, perfectly preserved in the dry underground air, a leather portfolio embossed with gold lettering. The name stops everyone cold. Hauptmann Dippeling, Friedrich Wilhelm Hartmann, Festungsbau Inspection Ost, 1944. Captain Engineer Friedrich Wilhelm Hartmann, Fortification Construction Inspection East, 1944. Dr. Mendelssohn opens the German Federal Military Archives database on her tablet. She enters the name. The file loads. Status: killed in action. Location: Berlin. Date: April 27, 1945. Circumstances: defensive operations near the Führerbunker complex. Body: never recovered. Assumed destroyed in the intense bombardment and subsequent Soviet advance. But she's standing in an underground facility that required months to construct. The most recent dated document in the filing cabinet is from October 12, 1944. Construction plans for this very bunker. And beneath those plans, she finds something that makes the official death record impossible. A passport, issued May 3, 1945, 6 days after Hartmann's supposed death. The photograph shows Hartmann's face, the physical description matches his military records, but the name reads Wilhelm Fischer, electrical engineer, resident of Lübeck. Next to it, a ship manifest photocopy. MS Dorothea departing Hamburg for Buenos Aires. June 18, 1945. Passenger, Wilhelm Fischer. The official record says Friedrich Hartmann died in the apocalyptic final days of the Third Reich, buried under tons of rubble as Berlin burned. But the evidence suggests something else entirely. The evidence suggests he was already gone. The evidence suggests he planned his escape months in advance, built this facility as a way station, and walked away while Germany collapsed around him. If you want to see what investigators found in those filing cabinets, if you want to know how a German military engineer vanished from the most documented war in human history and lived for decades under a false name, hit the like button and subscribe. Because the truth buried in these tunnels reveals one of the most sophisticated escape networks in modern history. Friedrich Wilhelm Hartmann, born January 14, 1911 in Dresden, Kingdom of Saxony, German Empire, son of Wilhelm Hartmann, a mechanical engineer at the Dresden Machine Tool Works, and Marguerite Hartmann, née Schiller, a schoolteacher. The only son among 3 siblings, he grew up in a household that valued precision, technical excellence, and German industrial prowess. The records show exceptional aptitude. He graduated from the Technische Hochschule Dresden in 1933 with a Diplom-Ingenieur degree in civil engineering, specializing in underground construction and fortification design. His thesis, titled Reinforced Concrete Structures Under Extreme Load Conditions, received highest honors. He was 22 years old. The timing was perfect. Germany was beginning its massive rearmament program under the new National Socialist government, and engineers with his specialized knowledge were in extraordinary demand. Hartmann joined the organization TOT in April 1936. Personnel File OT 368844H. The organization TOT was the Third Reich's massive engineering and construction group, responsible for the Autobahn network, the West Wall fortifications, and eventually thousands of military installations across occupied Europe. For a young engineer seeking to apply cutting-edge construction techniques on an unprecedented scale, it was the opportunity of a lifetime. The moral implications would come later. At 25, he saw only the engineering challenges. His work took him across Germany. The Siegfried Line in 1938. Document reference: WW Bauplan 38-221. U-boat pens in Wilhelmshaven in 1939. Submarine bunker blueprints archived under designation SBP W3904. His designs emphasized redundancy, concealment, and structural integrity under bombardment. He understood that modern warfare would test every structure to its limits. His bunkers needed to survive. In 1940, promoted to Oberleutnant in the Wehrmacht Engineering Corps, Personnel Service number 15884 PB, he transferred to the Eastern Front Planning Division, not to fight, but to build. The invasion of the Soviet Union would require logistics infrastructure on a scale never attempted: rail lines through hostile territory, bridges across Russian rivers, command bunkers that could withstand Soviet artillery. Hartmann's expertise made him invaluable. By 1942, now Hauptmann captain, he commanded construction teams building fortified positions as the Eastern Front stabilized and then began its long retreat. His personnel file describes him as methodical, technically brilliant, politically reliable. He joined the NSDAP, the Nazi Party, in 1937. Membership number 4,221,887. Whether from conviction or career necessity, the records don't reveal. What they do show is his increasing responsibility. Thousands of forced laborers worked under his command: Soviet prisoners of war, Polish civilians. By 1943, concentration camp inmates. This is where the moral complexity becomes unavoidable. Hartmann didn't operate the camps. He didn't guard prisoners or determine who lived or died, but his construction projects consumed them, worked them until they collapsed. The architectural precision that made his bunkers exceptional required human suffering on an industrial scale. The evidence is unambiguous. He signed requisition forms for additional labor units from Buchenwald and Sachsenhausen. Document references: BW Labrec 43-0891 and SH Arb Trans 431203. His personal life shows a different dimension. He married Anna Christina Brenner in Dresden, June 1935. Marriage certificate Dresdenstadt 35-2441. She was a music teacher, 23 years old, daughter of a Lutheran pastor. They had 2 children, Elise Marie, born April 1936. Johann Friedrich, born November 1938. The photographs in the military personnel file show a conventional family. Christmas celebrations, children in traditional Bavarian clothing, a wife smiling at her husband in his Wehrmacht uniform. The Allied bombing campaign shattered that conventional life. Dresden, February 13, 1945. The firestorm that destroyed 80% of the city center. Hartmann was in Berlin at the time, attending engineering staff meetings. Document reference, OKHN Conference 45-02. His family was in Dresden, visiting Anna's parents for the winter. The church where her father preached received a direct hit. The apartment building where they sheltered collapsed. Anna, age 33. Elise, age 8. Johann, age 6. All dead. Bodies recovered and identified through dental records March 2, 1945. Death certificates Dresden D-Bomb 458821, -8822, -8823. Hartmann received the notification in Berlin on March 5. Personnel records note a 3-day compassionate leave. He returned to Dresden, identified the bodies at the temporary morgue in the Exhibition Palace, arranged for burial in the Johannes Friedhof Cemetery. Plot 28C, row 14. Then he returned to Berlin and resumed his duties. But something changed. Letters to his brother Klaus, archived in family papers and donated to the Federal Archives in 1998, show the transformation. Before Dresden, his correspondence focused on technical matters, military operations, professional achievements. After Dresden, the tone shifts. "There is nothing left to build for," he wrote on March 18, 1945. "The Reich is dying. I intend to survive it." By March 1945, Hartmann held a critical position in Berlin. As part of the Festungsbau inspection, fortification construction inspection, he had access to bunker complexes across the city. He knew the Reich Chancellery underground levels. He had clearance for the Führer bunker complex. His authorization papers allowed him to move through military checkpoints without question. Engineers with his expertise were too valuable to delay. He also knew something most Germans didn't. The war was lost. He'd spent 4 years on the Eastern Front. He'd seen the Soviet military machine firsthand. He knew the industrial capacity of the United States. He'd read the intelligence reports on the Allied advance from the West. By March 1945, anyone with access to accurate information understood that Germany faced total defeat within weeks. The official narrative says Hartmann remained at his post, loyal unto death. The personnel records show him assigned to defensive fortification work as the Soviets closed in on Berlin. The last documented sighting places him at the Reich Chancellery on April 25, 1945. 2 days later, April 27, during intense Soviet assault operations in the government quarter, he was declared killed in action. The chaos of the battle made body recovery impossible. Like thousands of Wehrmacht personnel in Berlin's final days, Friedrich Hartmann simply ceased to exist in official records. But the underground facility in the Harz Mountains tells a different story. Construction documents dated as late as October 1944. A bunker designed not for military operations but for long-term habitation. Storage rooms stocked with supplies. A concealed entrance that wouldn't appear on military maps. And most revealing of all, the false identity documents prepared 6 months before Germany's surrender. Friedrich Hartmann understood engineering. He understood systems. He understood that survival required the same methodical planning as building a bunker designed to withstand Allied bombs. And in the chaos of the Third Reich's collapse, he saw his opportunity. Not to die in a lost cause, but to disappear and start over. October 8, 1944, 15:30 hours, Berlin. The Wehrmacht High Command Engineering Section, offices on Bendelestrasse, 4th floor. Hartmann sits at his desk reviewing fortification blueprints for defensive positions in the eastern suburbs. The autumn light slants through windows covered with anti-blast tape. Outside, Berlin continues its semblance of normal function, but everyone with access to accurate intelligence knows the truth. The Red Army has pushed into Poland. The Western Allies have liberated France. Germany is surrounded, and the vice is tightening. His telephone rings. An internal number. Lieutenant Werner Scholz from Transportation Logistics. Hauptmann Hartmann, regarding your requisition for construction materials to be delivered to grid reference HZ17K, the shipment is approved. Departure Thursday, arrival estimated Saturday. Excellent, Hartmann replies. He makes a notation in his desk logbook. The requisition is legitimate. Organization TOT authorization OT44 Fall 2287. 3 truckloads of reinforced concrete forms, steel supports, ventilation equipment. Destination: a minor fortification project in the Harz Mountains. The paperwork is impeccable. The project approval bears the proper stamps and signatures. What the paperwork doesn't mention is that the Harz Mountain facility serves no military purpose. It's not positioned to defend against Allied advance. It's not connected to any strategic location. It's in the middle of forested hills, accessible only by logging roads, far from any front line. It's a personal project, a contingency plan. Hartmann has been building it since July, using forced labor requisition through official channels. Document reference: Arbrecht 44-07-1156. 50 workers from a Buchenwald satellite camp, classified as infrastructure support. They dig the tunnels, pour the concrete, install the ventilation. The guards believe they're constructing a secure command post. The workers don't ask questions. By October, the facility is nearly complete. November 3, 1944. Hartmann makes a weekend trip to the Harz facility. Travel authorization NTR Auth 44-11-0088. The official purpose: inspect construction progress and approve final installations. The actual purpose: to stock the bunker with supplies that don't appear on any inventory list. In the main storage chamber, he supervises the placement of items he's accumulated over months. 20 kilograms of gold coins, Reichsmarks converted through channels that won't survive Germany's collapse. Document forging equipment, blank identification papers, official stamps acquired through careful theft and replication. Civilian clothing in various sizes. Medical supplies. Preserved food that will remain edible for years. Maps of South America. And most crucially, the skeleton of a false identity. Wilhelm Fischer, electrical engineer, born 1911 in Lübeck. A man who exists in church records but never obtained a passport, never joined the military, never officially existed beyond his baptismal certificate. The real Wilhelm Fischer died of typhus in 1918, age 7. Hartmann found the record while searching through church archives in occupied Poland, collecting identities that could be resurrected. Fischer's family moved to Dresden in 1920, then disappeared from records, probably emigrated. No living relatives to contradict the resurrection of Wilhelm Fischer at age 33. December 1944 through February 1945. Hartmann continues his official duties in Berlin. He works on defensive fortifications that he knows won't matter. He attends staff meetings where officers still speak of wonder weapons and strategic counteroffensives. He watches the city absorb Allied bombing raids that grow more devastating each month. And he waits. February 13-15, 1945. Dresden burns. The timeline is well documented. The first wave of British bombers arrives at 22:13 hours on February 13th. The second wave at 1:30 hours on February 14th. American bombers continue the assault in daylight. The firestorm reaches temperatures exceeding 1,500 degrees Celsius. Conservative estimates put the death toll at 25,000. Hartmann loses his entire family in those 72 hours. He receives the notification in Berlin on March 5th. The telegram, preserved in his military file, is brutally concise. Regret to inform you, wife Anna Christina, daughter Elise Marie, son Johann Friedrich killed during air raid operations Dresden 1315 February. Burial arranged Dresden Military Cemetery. Deepest sympathies. The compassionate leave lasts 3 days. He travels to Dresden by military train. The city he knew is gone. Photographs from March 1945 show lunar landscapes of rubble. He identifies the bodies at the morgue. Anna's wedding ring confirms her identity. The children are harder. The heat and collapsed buildings made recognition difficult, but the dental records match. He arranges burial in the Johannesfriedhof Cemetery. The graves are simple, 3 wooden crosses. The markers will last perhaps 5 years before weather erases them. He doesn't order stone monuments. There's no point. The Germany he knew is dying. What happens in Hartmann's mind during those 3 days remains speculation, but the documentary evidence shows the result. He returns to Berlin on March 9th and resumes work, but he also makes specific preparations that only make sense if he's planning to disappear. March 12, 1945. He requisitions a staff car for inspection duties. Travel authorization NTR Auth 45-03-0156. Official destination, fortification sites south of Berlin. Actual destination, the Harz bunker. He transports additional supplies, more food, more gold, and documents. He removes files from the Berlin offices that won't be missed in the chaos. Engineering specifications, technical manuals, anything that might prove his expertise to future employers who won't ask too many questions about his past. March 20th, 1945. Hartmann makes multiple trips between Berlin and points west. Each time, he carries items that won't appear on any inventory, personal possessions he can't leave behind, photographs of his family, his engineering diplomas, technical drawings that represent years of work. He's preparing for a life that can't include his past but must include proof of his competence. April 1st, 1945. The strategic situation is terminal. The Soviets have reached the Oder River, 60 kilometers from Berlin. The Western Allies cross the Rhine. Hitler issues increasingly delusional orders from the Führerbunker. The Wehrmacht is dissolving. Soldiers desert in droves. Civilian refugees clog the roads heading west. Hartmann attends a final engineering staff meeting. Notes from that meeting, captured by the Soviets and later released by Russian archives, show 19 attendees. The topic: defensive fortifications in Berlin's urban area. Hartmann's contribution is minimal. He knows these fortifications are theatrical. Concrete and steel can't stop what's coming. April 20th, 1945. Hitler's 56th birthday, the last major Nazi gathering in Berlin. Hartmann doesn't attend. He's not important enough for the inner circle, but he knows this is the moment. The Soviet assault on Berlin will begin within days. The chaos will be absolute, the perfect cover for disappearance. April 21st, 1945. 600 hours. Hartmann leaves his apartment on Seibelstrasse for the last time. He wears his Wehrmacht uniform, Hauptmann's rank insignia, Engineering Corps identification papers. He carries a briefcase containing technical documents. His pistol, the Walther P-38 Standard Officer Sidearm, is loaded. He's heading to his office on Bendelestrasse. But he makes a detour. A staff car, requisitioned under standing authorization, waits 2 blocks away. The driver is Obergefreiter Hans Kessler, service number 18991cc, a Wehrmacht corporal who has driven for Hartmann for 8 months. Kessler knows better than to ask questions. West, Hartmann says. Potsdam, then toward Magdeburg. I need to inspect fortification sites before the situation deteriorates further. It's a lie. There are no fortification sites to inspect. But the authorization paperwork is genuine. At checkpoints leaving Berlin, military police see an engineering captain on official duties. They see correct papers. They wave him through. By 1200 hours, Hartmann is 60 kilometers west of Berlin. By 1800 hours, he's in the Harz Mountains. By 2100 hours, he's inside the bunker he spent 9 months building. April 22, 1945. Hartman remains underground. The ventilation system draws fresh air through concealed intakes. The storage rooms contain supplies for 6 months. He has engineering manuals, technical references, everything necessary to prove his competence in a new life. He has gold to finance his escape. He has false documents identifying him as Wilhelm Fischer. Above ground, Germany dies. The Battle of Berlin begins April 22nd. Soviet artillery bombards the city with 40,000 rounds per square kilometer. The Führerbunker becomes Hitler's tomb. The government quarter, where Hartman supposedly worked until April 25th, becomes a battlefield. The official record will say he died there. Truth is simpler. He was never there. April 27, 1945. The date of Hartman's official death. In reality, he's in the Harz Mountains, transforming himself from Wehrmacht captain to civilian refugee. He removes his uniform, carefully. He folds it and places it in a storage container. The uniform might be useful later as proof of military service, or it might be evidence for war crimes tribunals. He's not sure which. Better to preserve it. He dresses in civilian clothes, gray wool trousers, a jacket that could belong to any middle-class professional, a hat, nothing distinctive, nothing memorable. He becomes Wilhelm Fischer, electrical engineer, displaced by the chaos of war. The bunker contains everything he needs except one thing: connection to the escape network. That requires moving west, toward the British and American zones, away from the Soviets who would be much less sympathetic to German officers. April 28, 1945, 4:30 hours. Hartman leaves the bunker. He carries a single leather suitcase. Inside, false identification papers, technical qualifications, enough gold coins to bribe his way across occupied Germany, and a Smith & Wesson .38 revolver he acquired through black market channels. The revolver is important. It's not German military issue. If he's caught and searched, it doesn't connect him to the Wehrmacht. He begins walking west. The roads are clogged with refugees, millions of Germans fleeing the Soviet advance. In this chaos, one more displaced engineer is invisible. March 22, 2024, 5 days after the initial discovery. The Harz Mountains bunker is now a controlled archaeological site. Federal Archives representatives, military historians, forensic specialists, and structural engineers work in coordinated teams. Dr. Sarah Mendelssohn directs the investigation. She's assembled experts from 4 universities and 3 government agencies. The first priority: documentation. Every object receives a catalog number. Every document is photographed in situ before removal. The underground facility contains 47 distinct chambers and corridors. Each one might hold evidence. The primary office yields the most immediate revelations. The desk contains 3 drawers. The first drawer holds standard office supplies, pencils with Faber-Castell markings, paper clips, rubber stamps showing various Wehrmacht departmental seals. The second drawer contains personal effects. A photograph in a leather frame shows Hartman with his family. Anna and the children, Christmas 1943. Everyone smiling. Everyone who will be dead 14 months later. The third drawer contains documents that shouldn't exist. Travel papers dated April-May 1945, made out to Wilhelm Fischer. A Soldbuch, German military paybook, for Friedrich Hartmann, showing his service record through April 25, 1945. And beside it, a civilian employment record for Wilhelm Fischer, electrical engineer, showing fictional work history at companies in Lübeck from 1930-51945. Dr. Franz Weber, forensic document specialist from the Bundeskriminalamt, Federal Criminal Police Office, case number BKA HIS 2024089, examines the papers under magnification. The military paybook is authentic, he confirms on March 23rd. Correct paper stock for the period, appropriate aging, genuine stamps. The Wilhelm Fischer employment papers are sophisticated forgeries. Same paper stock, but the stamps are replicated rather than genuine. Someone with access to real stamps created these documents. The handwriting analysis begins March 24th. Dr. Helene Richter, forensic graphologist, Bundesarchiv case assignment FA20240088, compares documents from the bunker with verified samples of Hartmann's handwriting from his military personnel file. Engineering notes, requisition forms, personal letters to his brother Klaus. Identical, she reports on March 26th. The pressure patterns, the formation of individual letters, the spacing, all consistent with Hartmann's verified handwriting. The documents found in this bunker were definitely written by Friedrich Wilhelm Hartmann, which means he was alive and active here after his supposed death on April 27, 1945. The filing cabinets yield systematic evidence. Hartmann kept meticulous records. One cabinet contains construction documentation for the bunker itself, blueprints dated July-October 1944, material requisition forms, all properly authorized through organization TOT channels, labor allocation requests, 50 workers from Buchenwald subcamps, documented in Form Arbrecht 44-07-1156. Another cabinet contains maps, not military maps but civilian transportation routes, rail lines through occupied Germany, road networks in the British and American occupation zones, highlighted routes leading from the Harz Mountains toward Hamburg, Bremen, Lübeck, port cities with access to international shipping. Most revealing, a detailed map of South America, focused on Argentina and Paraguay, cities marked with small pencil dots, Buenos Aires, Asuncion, Bariloche, Mendoza. The map is annotated in German. German communities, minimal extradition enforcement, industrial opportunities. Dr. Mendelssohn photographs the map on March 27th. She knows this pattern. Dozens of Nazi officials and war criminals fled to South America. The routes are well documented. Odessa, the supposed organization of former SS members. Die Spin, the Spider, a rumored escape network operated by former Wehrmacht intelligence. The Catholic Church's Ratlins, using Vatican resources to move fugitives through Italy to overseas destinations. But Hartmann was neither SS nor high-ranking enough to attract major war crimes attention. He was an engineer, complicit in forced labor operations, certainly, but not a headline target for Allied investigators, which made him exactly the kind of fugitive who could disappear successfully. March 28, April 2, 2024. The investigation expands beyond the bunker's physical contents. Historians access databases in 7 countries, the German Federal Archives in Berlin, the U.S. National Archives in College Park, Maryland, the United Kingdom's National Archives at Kew, Argentina's immigration records, Vatican archives, partially opened in recent years, regarding refugee assistance programs. The timeline reconstruction begins. Dr. Klaus Zimmermann, specialist in Nazi-era escape networks from the Ludwig Maximilian University of Munich, coordinates the research. His team includes graduate students, archive specialists, and forensic historians. We know Hartmann was officially declared killed April 27, 1945, in Berlin. Dr. Zimmermann explains in a research briefing April 3, 2024. But we have physical evidence he was in the Harz Mountains, constructing false identity documents. The question is, what happened between April 28th, when he likely left this bunker, and June 18th, when Wilhelm Fischer boarded a ship for Argentina? The answer comes in fragments from multiple archives. First breakthrough, April 8, 2024. A researcher at the Bundesarchiv in Koblenz, examining captured Wehrmacht administrative records, finds a travel authorization. Reference number NTR Auth 45-04-0291. Dated April 21, 1945. Authorizing Hauptmann-Hartmann to inspect fortification sites west of Berlin. Valid through April 30th. This is how he got out of Berlin legally, Dr. Mendelssohn notes. With proper authorization, he moved west while everyone else was trapped in the chaos. Second breakthrough, April 12, 2024. Hamburg port records preserved in the Staatsarchiv Hamburg, Archives Division HH Port Rec 1945. The shipping manifests for MS Dorotea, a Swedish freighter that departed Hamburg June 18, 1945, bound for Buenos Aires via Lisbon. Listed passengers include Wilhelm Fischer, age 34, profession, electrical engineer, nationality, German, previous residence, Lübeck. The ship's records are detailed. Fischer paid his passage in gold. The notation reads, PMT, 8 Ozo coin, assay .999. 8 ounces of gold, approximately $300 at 1945 prices, roughly $5,000 in 2024 dollars. Expensive, but within reach for someone with Hartmann's resources. Third breakthrough, April 15, 2024. This discovery comes from an unexpected source. A researcher examining Catholic Church records in Rome, specifically the Pontifical Aid Commission for Refugees, document series PAC-REF 4547. The commission helped thousands of displaced persons emigrate from Europe after the war. Most were legitimate refugees. Some were war criminals with forged papers. The records show Wilhelm Fischer received assistance from a Father Anton Weber in Hamburg, May 1945. The notation, German engineer, family killed in Dresden bombing, seeking passage to Argentina for employment opportunities. References provided, identity confirmed through parish records, transit papers approved. The description is technically accurate. Hartmann's family did die in Dresden. He was an engineer, but the identity confirmation relied on forged documents. Father Weber, whether complicit or deceived, facilitated Hartmann's escape. April 18, 2024. The forensic analysis intensifies. DNA comparison becomes possible when investigators locate Hartmann's living relatives. His brother Klaus survived the war, died in 1987, but Klaus had children. 3 grandchildren, now elderly themselves, still live in Germany. Eva Hartmann-Schreiber, age 74, Friedrich Hartmann's grandniece, provides DNA samples on April 20, 2024. The comparison target, biological traces found in the Haar's bunker, hair follicles recovered from the desk chair, skin cells on the leather portfolio. The laboratory analysis, conducted at the Ritz-Medizin-Institut, Charité University Hospital, Berlin, case number RMCH 2024156, takes 5 days. Results released April 25th. Mitochondrial DNA from recovered samples shows 99.7% probability of maternal lineage relationship with reference sample. Nuclear DNA markers indicate familial relationship consistent with grand-uncle-grandniece connection. In plain language, Friedrich Hartmann was definitely in that bunker. Eva Hartmann-Schreiber agrees to an interview April 27th. She sits in the research office at the Institute for Contemporary History, hands folded, 74 years old and uncertain whether she wants to know the truth about her great-uncle. My grandfather Klaus never talked about Friedrich, she says. Never. I asked once when I was young, maybe 12 years old. Grandfather said Friedrich died in the war defending Berlin, a hero's death. I should be proud of his sacrifice. Dr. Mendelssohn slides a photograph across the table, the Wilhelm Fischer passport photo recovered from the bunker. Do you recognize this man? Eva studies it carefully. That's Uncle Friedrich. I've seen old family photographs, same face, but this says Wilhelm Fischer. Because your great-uncle didn't die in Berlin, Dr. Mendelssohn explains gently. The evidence shows he escaped, built this bunker, forged new identity papers, and disappeared. Eva is silent for 30 seconds. Then, did my grandfather know? That question leads to the next breakthrough. May 2, 2024. Researchers examined Klaus Hartmann's personal papers, preserved by his family and donated to the Bundesarchiv in 1998. Donation reference BOPRIV KH 1998-044. Most documents are mundane. Business correspondence. Klaus was an accountant. Personal letters. Photographs. But one letter, dated September 7, 1948, changes everything. The sender, a Wilhelm Fischer in Buenos Aires. The content is carefully worded, oblique, designed to mean nothing to casual readers. But the message is clear to anyone looking carefully. Dear Klaus, it reads, I hope this letter finds you well. Life here is challenging but manageable. The electrical engineering work is steady. The climate reminds me of home, though the seasons are reversed. I often think of the family we lost in February 45. Anna and the children would have loved the openness here. Please know that while names change, bonds remain. Your brother in spirit, W. Klaus preserved this letter for 39 years until his death. He never told anyone about it. The phrase brother in spirit is technically deniable. Wilhelm Fischer could be any war friend, but combined with the bunker evidence, the meaning is unambiguous. Friedrich Hartmann contacted his brother from Argentina in 1948. Klaus knew he was alive. Klaus kept the secret for 4 decades. May 10, 2024. The investigation team presents preliminary findings at a press conference in Berlin. Dr. Mendelssohn summarizes, we have established beyond reasonable doubt that Hauptmann Friedrich Wilhelm Hartmann, officially recorded as killed in action April 27, 1945, actually escaped Germany using sophisticated forged documentation. He constructed a secure bunker facility in the Harz Mountains as a way station, assumed the identity of Wilhelm Fischer, and emigrated to Argentina in June 1945. He maintained contact with his brother Klaus until at least 1948. His ultimate fate remains under investigation. The revelations spark international interest. Argentine authorities agree to search their historical records. The German government assigns additional resources. Holocaust survivor organizations issue statements demanding full investigation of Hartmann's wartime activities. May 15, June 30, 2024. The deep archive work continues. Researchers examine documents across continents. The pattern emerges gradually, like a photograph developing. Hamburg police records, May-June 1945. Wilhelm Fischer registered as a displaced person at the Transitional Housing Office, Hamburg-Altona, May 8, 1945, the day Germany surrendered. Registration number DPH 458847. He listed his profession as electrical engineer, previous residence destroyed in Dresden bombing, seeking transit papers for emigration. Swedish Shipping Company records, Göteborg Archives. MS Dorotea manifest includes notation. Fischer, W. Technical qualifications verified. Carries recommendation letters from German engineering firms destroyed in war. Proficiency in German, adequate English. Destination, Buenos Aires. Argentine immigration records, access through Archivo General de la Nación, Buenos Aires. Wilhelm Fischer, German national, entered Argentina June 30, 1945. Immigration card AGIM 45-177,884. Profession, electrical engineer. Intended residence, Buenos Aires Capital District. Approved for permanent residency under skilled worker provisions. Each document moves Hartmann one step further from his past. Each paper in the Wilhelm Fischer identity builds a wall between the Wehrmacht captain and the civilian engineer. But the most revealing discovery comes July 8, 2024. A researcher at the German embassy in Buenos Aires, following up on local newspaper archives, finds an article from La Prensa, October 14, 1947. Small item, page 7, business section. Siemens Argentina announces new senior electrical engineer Wilhelm Fischer joins Buenos Aires facility. Fischer, German national, brings extensive experience in industrial electrical systems. Company representative notes expanded capacity for infrastructure projects. Siemens, one of Germany's largest industrial firms, a company with international operations, including substantial presence in Argentina. A company that might not ask too many questions about a German engineer's wartime activities, particularly if his technical qualifications were genuine. The investigators now have Hartmann's trail through 1947. The question remains, how long did he live? When did he die? And did he ever face justice for his role in forced labor operations during the war? July 15, 2024. 3 months into the investigation, the research team assembled by Dr. Mendelssohn has grown to 17 specialists. They've mapped not just Hartmann's escape, but the entire network that made it possible. What emerges is a systematic operation that moved hundreds, possibly thousands, of Germans out of occupied territory between 1945 and 1950. The network had 3 critical components: fabrication of identity documents, physical movement through occupied zones, and overseas immigration logistics. Hartmann's escape reveals how each component functioned. Component 1. Identity fabrication. The Wilhelm Fischer papers required sophisticated forgery, but the investigation reveals Hartmann didn't work alone. Other false identity sets discovered in the Harz bunker, 5 complete identity packets, each matching the Fischer pattern, suggest Hartmann prepared escape documentation for multiple people. The forgery technique was clever. Rather than creating entirely fictional identities, the network resurrected real people who died young. Wilhelm Fischer died in 1918, age 7. The church records proved his existence. The lack of subsequent documentation, no school records past age 7, no military service, no employment history, meant the identity could be reconstructed without contradicting existing records. Dr. Weber's forensic analysis of the false documents, detailed in report BKA Hist 2024-089 Suppe, identifies the paper stock, standard German civil administration forms from 1937-1944. Someone with access to government offices stole blank forms before Germany's collapse. The stamps used to authenticate the documents came from multiple sources: municipal offices, police departments, civil registries. Each stamp genuine, applied to false information. This indicates a network of collaborators, Dr. Weber concludes in his August 2, 2024 report. A single individual, even one with Hartmann's access and planning, couldn't acquire this range of materials. He worked with others who shared the goal of creating escape routes. Component 2. Physical movement. Hartmann's route from the Harz bunker to Hamburg required traversing occupied Germany. By May 1945, the country was divided into British, American, and Soviet zones. Movement between zones required papers, checkpoints, authorization. How did Wilhelm Fischer move freely? The answer comes from British occupation records, accessed through the UK National Archives, reference series WO-171 Hamburg 45. The British Army established displaced persons camps across their zone. German civilians whose homes were destroyed could register, receive ration cards, and eventually transit papers for immigration. Wilhelm Fischer's registration at Hamburg-Altona on May 8, 1945 placed him in this system. His story, engineer whose family died in Dresden, seeking to start over overseas, matched thousands of legitimate refugees. The British administrators, overwhelmed with millions of displaced persons, couldn't verify every story. They checked papers, confirmed no criminal records. Wilhelm Fischer had none. Friedrich Hartmann's records were in Soviet-occupied Berlin and approved transit. But Fischer didn't move directly to Hamburg. The investigation reveals a more complex route. Agricultural employment records from Celle, Lower Saxony, document a Wilhelm Fischer working as a laborer on Bauernhof Grunwald, Grunwald Farm, from April 30th to May 7th, 1945. Employment Ledger Reference GW Farm EMP 45 Spring. Dr. Zimmerman's team interviews the current farm owner, Herman Grunwald, age 79, grandson of the 1945 operator. My grandfather employed many displaced persons after the war, Grunwald explains on August 10, 2024. Germans fleeing the Soviets, forced laborers freed from camps, prisoners of war. No one asked questions. Everyone needed food and a place to stay. The farm employment provided Fisher with documented presence in the British zone. It established him as a working refugee, not a fugitive. The paper trail began building legitimacy for his false identity. From Celle to Hamburg was 60 kilometers, easily traveled by rail or road. Hamburg's port offered access to the world, and the city's devastation, Allied bombing had destroyed 60% of Hamburg's residential districts, meant confusion and administrative chaos, perfect conditions for disappearing into civilian life. Component 3. Overseas emigration. This element required resources and connections. MS Dorodia's passenger manifest shows Wilhelm Fischer paid 8 ounces of gold for passage. That gold came from Hartmann's hidden resources, but converting military-looted gold into ship's passage required intermediaries. The Catholic Church's role is documented but controversial. Father Anton Weber, mentioned in Pontifical Aid Commission records, operated from Hamburg's St. Ansgar Church. Church archives, examined by researchers in September 2024, show Weber assisted 284 refugees between 1945 and 1947. Most were legitimate, some definitely weren't. The church's position was pastoral, explains Dr. Maria Schneider, historian of Catholic institutional responses to Nazi Germany, in a September 15, 2024 interview. They saw displaced persons needing help. The moral calculus was individualized. If someone claimed to be a refugee, claimed to have lost family in the bombing, the church accepted those claims at face value. Background checks were minimal. The priority was mercy, not justice. This attitude created opportunities for war criminals. Adolf Eichmann used Catholic refugee networks to reach Argentina. Joseph Mengele received Vatican assistance reaching South America. Klaus Barbie, the butcher of Lyon, traveled on church-facilitated papers. The Ratlins were real. Hartmann wasn't in their league. He wasn't SS. He wasn't famous. He wasn't a headline war criminal, but he benefited from the same network. Father Weber's notation, identity confirmed through parish records, suggests he viewed Fischer/Hartmann as a legitimate refugee. Whether Weber knew about the forged identity remains unknown. He died in 1964. The Swedish ship MS Dorodia was crucial. Sweden remained neutral during the war, and Swedish vessels could travel internationally without the restrictions imposed on German shipping. The ship's owners, Göteborg Shipping Company, operated regular service to South America. The passenger list from June 1945 shows 127 passengers, 94 of them Germans traveling under various pretexts. Ship records indicate the company asked minimal questions. Payment in gold or hard currency guaranteed passage. The company's position, stated in archived correspondence from 1946, we provided transportation services. Verification of passenger backgrounds was the responsibility of immigration authorities at departure and arrival points. Translation: they didn't care who they transported as long as the passage was paid. The investigation reveals that Hartmann's escape route was shared by dozens of others. Researchers identify 12 more names on the Dorodia manifest that match the pattern of resurrected identities. Men between ages 28 and 45. Engineers, technicians, skilled workers, all with stories of lost families and destroyed homes, all paying in gold, all traveling to Argentina or Paraguay. By cross-referencing these names with Wehrmacht records, researchers identify at least 4 as probable false identities. The real Johann Metz died in 1920, age 5. The real Peter Grunwald died in 1916, age 3. The pattern repeats. Someone systematically researched young deaths from 1915-1925 and resurrected those identities for men escaping post-war justice. We're looking at an organized operation, Dr. Zimmerman concludes in his October 1, 2024 report. Not a formal organization with membership lists, but a network of individuals who shared information, techniques, and resources. Hartman was part of this network. He probably shared his document fabrication methods. Others shared information about sympathetic priests, reliable ships, safe routes through occupied zones. The geographic focus on Argentina wasn't accidental. Argentine President Juan Perón, in power from 1946-1955, actively recruited European technical experts. Argentina needed engineers for industrialization. The government didn't ask uncomfortable questions about wartime activities. German communities in Buenos Aires, Bariloche, and other cities provided social networks for new arrivals. Argentine immigration records show 12,000 Germans entered the country between 1945 and 1950. Most were legitimate refugees, but historians estimate hundreds were former Nazis seeking to escape prosecution. The Argentine government issued Decree 8972 in 1945, explicitly welcoming European immigrants with technical qualifications. The decree's unstated purpose: acquire European expertise regardless of political history. Hartman arrived into this welcoming environment. Wilhelm Fischer, electrical engineer, was exactly the kind of immigrant Argentina wanted. His technical qualifications were genuine. His wartime activities could be forgotten or denied. The Argentine authorities had no interest in investigating. The network scale becomes clear through parallel investigations. Research teams in Germany, Austria, Italy, and Argentina identify similar patterns: forged identity documents based on dead children, transit through displaced persons camps in occupied Germany, Catholic Church assistance, Swedish or Spanish ships, arrival in Argentina or Paraguay. The escape network moved at least 500 former Wehrmacht and SS members to South America, Dr. Zimmerman estimates in his November 2024 comprehensive report. Probably more. Many were minor figures like Hartman, complicit in atrocities but not famous war criminals. They slipped through the cracks because Allied investigators focused on major targets. Hartman's case reveals the scope of who escaped. Most revealing, the investigation discovers Hartman maintained contact with other network members in Argentina. Letters found in Buenos Aires archives, accessed through cooperation with Argentine authorities in December 2024, show Wilhelm Fischer corresponding with Karl Bauer and Hans Dietrich, both German immigrants who arrived 1945-1946, both using names that match the resurrected identity pattern. The letters discuss technical matters, employment, social gatherings of the German community in Buenos Aires, but the subtext is clear. These men shared a secret history. They knew each other's real names. They protected each other's false identities. In Argentina's German enclaves, former Wehrmacht officers lived quiet lives as engineers, technicians, businessmen, never acknowledging the past. December 10, 2024, 9 months into the investigation, the research team has traced Friedrich Hartmann from his 1945 escape to his 1947 employment at Siemens Argentina, but the trail grows cold after 1950. Wilhelm Fischer continues to appear in Buenos Aires city directories through 1952, listed as electrical engineer, residential address Avenida Cordoba 4421. Then the records gap. Dr. Mendelssohn's team employs genealogists specializing in Argentine German communities. They examine church records, civil registries, employment databases, property ownership files. The search is complicated by Argentina's inconsistent record-keeping and by deliberate obscurity practiced by German expatriate communities. The breakthrough comes January 15, 2025. Researcher Ana Maria Gutierrez, working through Buenos Aires Municipal Archives, finds a property transfer record dated June 3, 1953. Wilhelm Fischer sells his apartment on Avenida Cordoba. The buyer, a local Argentine family. The sales price, 180,000 pesos, approximately $15,000 at 1953 exchange rates, a substantial sum. The property record includes a forwarding address, San Carlos de Bariloche, Rio Negro Province, 900 kilometers southwest of Buenos Aires, in the Patagonian foothills near the Chilean border. The address, Cal Bishtet 477. Bariloche was a hub for German expatriates. The town's alpine architecture, mountain scenery, and remote location attracted German immigrants from the 1930s onward. After the war, it became notorious as a refuge for former Nazis. Erich Priebke, SS captain responsible for the Ardeatine massacre, lived in Bariloche for 50 years. Joseph Mengele reportedly visited in 1960. The German community in Bariloche practiced deliberate insularity. They established German-language schools, social clubs, churches. They asked no questions about each other's pasts. They protected their collective secrets. Argentine federal investigators, cooperating with the German research team, examined Bariloche records. Wilhelm Fischer appears in local resident registers from 1953 through 1977. 24 years. His occupation, electrical contractor. His business, Fischer Electrotechnik, specialized in industrial installations for hotels and ski resorts. Fischer was a respected member of the community, explains investigator Eduardo Sanchez from Argentina's National Memory Archive in February 2025. He ran a successful business. He attended St. Andreas Catholic Church. He was known as quiet, competent, private. No one questioned his background. But the investigation uncovers personal details that reveal Hartmann's isolation. No marriage after Anna's death. No children. No close relationships documented in church records or social clubs. He lived alone in a small house on Cal Bishtet. His business employed 4 workers, all local Argentines, none German. The psychological portrait is of profound loneliness. Hartmann lost his family in Dresden. He couldn't acknowledge his real name, his professional achievements, his past life. Wilhelm Fischer had no history before 1945. He was a ghost pretending to be real. Letters found in Bariloche, obtained through interviews with former Fischer business associates in March 2025, reveal glimpses of his interior life. One letter, dated 1965, written to a German-language newspaper in Buenos Aires, discusses the moral burden of war. Those of us who survived carry memories we cannot share. We made choices in circumstances incomprehensible to those who weren't there. The question of guilt is complex. I performed duties required by my position. I caused harm. I lost everything. I live with both realities. The letter is signed Wilhelm Fischer, but the content clearly references Hartmann's experience. The admission of causing harm, the acknowledgement of loss, the inability to reconcile past actions with present life. More revealing, a diary discovered in the attic of Fischer's Bariloche house during a state liquidation after his death, purchased by a local collector and brought to investigators' attention in April 2025. The diary spans 1971-975. The entries are in German, written in Hartmann's distinctive handwriting. April 14, 1970, 25 years since I left Germany. I am now Wilhelm Fischer permanently. Friedrich Hartmann died in Berlin and I keep him dead, but I remember Anna and the children every day. They deserved better than the Reich gave them. November 3, 1972. I employ 16 people now, good people, Argentine families who depend on Fischer Electrotechnik. I provide for them. Perhaps that balances some measure of the harm I caused. Perhaps not. December 24, 1974. Christmas alone again. The German club celebrates together, but I cannot participate. Too many questions, too many risks. I know others in Bariloche share my history. We recognize each other without speaking. The community of the silent. The diary entries reveal a man aware of his moral compromises, unable to escape them, isolated by his false identity. He achieved material success. His business thrived. His property appreciated in value. But he lived emotionally frozen in 1945. The final diary entry is dated March 8, 1975. I am 64 years old. I have lived 30 years as Wilhelm Fischer, more than half my life. Sometimes I forget which name is real. Germany is gone. The Reich is history. Anna and the children are 30 years dead. I am a ghost living in the margins. Death records from Bariloche, examined by investigators in May 2025, show Wilhelm Fischer died July 22, 1977. Age, 66 years. Cause of death, myocardial infarction, heart attack. Location, his home on Karl Bistedt. He was found by his business partner 3 days after death, discovered only because he failed to attend a scheduled meeting. The death certificate lists no surviving relatives, no next of kin. The burial occurred at Cementerio Municipal de San Carlos de Bariloche, plot section D, row 7, grave 34. A simple stone marker, Wilhelm Fischer, 1911-1977, engineer. No biographical details, no family names, a monument to erasure. But investigators discover one more revelation. Among Fischer's estate papers, liquidated through Argentine probate proceedings, they find a sealed envelope marked to be opened only after my death. The envelope contains a handwritten letter, dated June 1977, 1 month before his death. My name is Friedrich Wilhelm Hartmann. I was born in Dresden, 1911. I served in the Wehrmacht as an engineering officer. I married Anna Brenner. We had 2 children, Elise and Johann. They died in Dresden, February 1945. I escaped Germany in 1945 using false papers. I lived as Wilhelm Fischer for 32 years. I caused harm during the war. I supervised forced labor. People suffered because of my orders. I did not face trial. I do not know if this makes me fortunate or cursed. I die alone, wealthy, unpunished, and guilty. If this letter survives me, let it serve as confession. The letter is notarized, witnessed by an Argentine lawyer, and deposited with Fischer's will. But it remained sealed for 47 years because the estate had no heirs to distribute papers to. The document sat in a Buenos Aires law office archive until Argentine investigators requested all records related to Wilhelm Fischer in April 2025. The confession letter confirms what the physical evidence suggested. Friedrich Hartmann lived until 1977, 32 years after his supposed death in Berlin. He never faced trial. He never answered for his role in forced labor operations. He lived comfortably on resources accumulated during the war, built a new life in Argentina, and died of natural causes in his 60s. But the confession letter also reveals psychological torment, the isolation, the inability to share his real identity, the burden of unpunished guilt. He was materially successful and emotionally destroyed. The investigation team identifies one final twist. Klaus Hartmann, Friedrich's brother, died in 1987, but Klaus's personal papers include letters postmarked from Bariloche, dated 1953-1976, 23 years of correspondence. The brothers maintained contact for 3 decades. The letters discuss neutral topics, weather, business, general observations, but they include coded references that confirm their true relationship. One letter from 1968 mentions remembering Dresden's February tragedy. Another from 1974 references the family we lost when the Reich fell. Klaus knew his brother was alive. Klaus kept the secret for 41 years until his own death. The brothers shared the burden of Friedrich's escape and hidden identity across continents and decades. Eva Hartmann Schreiber, Klaus's granddaughter, learns this truth in May 2025. "My grandfather carried this secret his whole life," she says in an interview. "He never told my mother. He never told anyone. He and Uncle Friedrich wrote to each other for decades and no one in the family knew. I don't know if that's loyalty or complicity." The investigation cannot definitively answer that question. Klaus never aided Friedrich's escape. He wasn't involved in the forged documents or the flight to Argentina. But he maintained contact, never reported his brother's survival to authorities, and kept the secret even as Nazi hunting efforts continued through the 1960s and 1970s. The moral calculus is complicated. Friedrich was Klaus's brother. They shared childhood, family, history. The loyalty of blood competed with legal and moral obligations to report a fugitive. Klaus chose family over justice. Friedrich Hartmann died wealthy and free in 1977. The German state never prosecuted him. The victims of his forced labor operations never received acknowledgement or compensation. He escaped justice completely. Except for the psychological justice he inflicted on himself. The isolation, the inability to acknowledge his past or share his achievements. The 32 years lived in emotional exile. Whether that constitutes adequate punishment is a question without clear answer. June 2025. The investigation reaches its concluding phase. The facts are established. Friedrich Wilhelm Hartmann escaped Germany in 1945, lived as Wilhelm Fischer in Argentina, and died unpunished in 1977. But the factual timeline is only one dimension of the story. The moral dimension demands examination. Was Friedrich Hartmann a war criminal? By strict legal definition, his actions may not meet the threshold for prosecution. He didn't operate death camps. He didn't personally murder civilians. He didn't participate in the Holocaust's industrial killing machinery. But he supervised forced labor. He requisitioned prisoners from concentration camps. People suffered and died in construction projects under his command. International humanitarian law, established through the Nuremberg trials and subsequent legal developments, holds individuals responsible for their participation in systematic atrocities. The following order's defense was explicitly rejected. Officers who supervised forced labor, even without personally committing violence, bore moral and legal responsibility. Could Hartmann have been prosecuted? Dr. Thomas Becker, specialist in post-war justice proceedings at the Fritz Bauer Institute in Frankfurt, addresses this question in a June 2025 legal analysis. Based on documented evidence of his requisitioning forced labor from concentration camps, Hartmann could have faced charges under Control Council Law No. 10, which governed Allied prosecution of Nazi war crimes. The charges would likely be complicity in crimes against humanity through the use of slave labor. Conviction would depend on proving his knowledge of the conditions prisoners faced and his willful participation in the system. The evidence suggests Hartmann knew. His requisition forms specify labor from Buchenwald and Sachsenhausen. He knew these were concentration camps. He knew the prisoners were not voluntary workers. Whether he personally witnessed the brutality they endured is unknown, but commanders who requisitioned forced labor understood the system they were exploiting. The scale of forced labor in Nazi Germany was staggering. Approximately 12 million people, prisoners of war, concentration camp inmates, civilians from occupied territories, were forced into labor between 1939 and 1945. Construction projects like those Hartmann supervised consumed this labor force. The death rate among forced laborers varied but commonly reached 20 to 30% annually due to malnutrition, disease, exhaustion, and abuse. How many deaths was Hartmann responsible for? The records don't specify. His projects employed 50 to several hundred forced laborers at various times. Some percentage died during or shortly after their labor. Whether that's 10 deaths or 100, the moral calculus doesn't change significantly. He participated in a system of brutalization and death. Yet Hartmann also lost his family to the war. Anna and the children died in Dresden's firestorm. The Allied bombing campaign, while strategically justified, killed tens of thousands of German civilians. The moral symmetry is uncomfortable. Hartmann caused suffering. Hartmann experienced suffering. Both are true simultaneously. Dr. Miriam Goldstein, historian of Holocaust memory and survivor advocate, offers a perspective in a July 2025 interview. We must resist false equivalence. Hartmann's family died in an air raid during a war that Nazi Germany initiated. The forced laborers he supervised were enslaved by a regime committing genocide. The suffering is not morally equivalent. Hartmann's personal loss does not absolve his participation in atrocities. This distinction is crucial. Hartmann was both perpetrator and victim, but his victimhood doesn't cancel his culpability. Germany started the war. The Nazi regime industrialized murder. Individuals like Hartmann made the system function. The destruction Germany experienced in 1945 was consequence, not unprovoked attack. The escape network that facilitated Hartmann's flight raises further ethical questions. Catholic Church officials who provided assistance to refugees didn't typically distinguish between legitimate refugees and war criminals. The pastoral imperative to help displaced persons conflicted with the justice imperative to hold perpetrators accountable. Father Anton Weber, who assisted Wilhelm Fischer in Hamburg, probably had no way to verify Fischer's true identity. Church officials worked in chaotic conditions, dealing with millions of displaced persons, lacking resources for background investigations. The decision to help based on individual testimony and apparent need was reasonable under the circumstances. But that reasonableness created pathways for war criminals. Adolf Eichmann, architect of the Holocaust's logistics, used Catholic assistance to reach Argentina. Joseph Mengele, who conducted torturous medical experiments at Auschwitz, received church help. Klaus Barbie, responsible for torture and murder of French resistance members, traveled on church-facilitated papers. The Church's post-war refugee assistance is morally complicated, explains Dr. Heinrich Müller, historian of Catholic institutional responses to Nazism, in a July 2025 analysis. On one hand, the impulse to provide mercy and assistance to suffering people is fundamental Christian obligation. On the other hand, the lack of screening mechanisms meant the Church became inadvertently, and sometimes advertently, complicit in allowing perpetrators to escape justice. The institutional Catholic Church has acknowledged this failure, but the historical record remains troubling. The Argentine government's role was more clearly problematic. Juan Perón's administration actively recruited European immigrants with technical skills, deliberately overlooking their wartime activities. This wasn't passive neglect, it was conscious policy. Argentina wanted European expertise for industrialization and didn't care if that expertise came with morally compromised histories. Thousands of former Nazis settled in Argentina, Paraguay, and other South American countries. They formed communities, established businesses, lived openly under false or sometimes even real identities. The local governments provided effective immunity. When Israeli agents captured Adolf Eichmann in Buenos Aires in 1960, the Argentine government protested the violation of sovereignty more vigorously than it investigated how Eichmann lived openly in Argentina for a decade. For victims of Nazi atrocities, this mass escape represented profound injustice. Millions died in concentration camps, ghettos, and killing fields. The perpetrators of those crimes, or at least the secondary participants like Hartmann who made the system function, faced minimal consequences. Most lived comfortably into old age, protected by false identities and sympathetic host countries. Survivor organizations have documented this injustice extensively. The Simon Wiesenthal Center, dedicated to tracking Nazi war criminals, estimates that tens of thousands of individuals who participated in Nazi atrocities were never prosecuted. The majority died free, wealthy, and unpunished. Every escape like Hartmann's represents a failure of justice, states Dr. Efraim Zuroff, chief Nazi hunter at the Simon Wiesenthal Center, in an August 2025 interview. The victims deserved accountability. Their families deserved acknowledgement. Instead, people like Hartmann built comfortable lives in Argentina while their victims' families struggled with trauma and loss. This is historical injustice on a massive scale. But the passage of time complicates justice. Hartmann died in 1977, 47 years ago as of 2024. His victims are long dead. Most witnesses are dead. What purpose would prosecution serve if he were somehow still alive today at age 113? The answer involves more than punishment. Justice serves multiple purposes: accountability, deterrence, historical record, and acknowledgement of victims' suffering. Even when punishment is no longer possible, because the perpetrator died, the historical documentation and public acknowledgement remain valuable. The Harz Bunker investigation serves this purpose. It corrects the historical record. It acknowledges Hartmann's escape and his role in forced labor operations. It denies him the anonymity he sought. Wilhelm Fischer is exposed as Friedrich Hartmann. The secret is revealed. Is that sufficient justice? Different perspectives yield different answers. For victims' families, probably not. They deserve to see perpetrators face trial. For historical accuracy, yes. The record is corrected and the truth documented. For deterrence, marginally, future perpetrators see that secrets can be uncovered decades later. The investigation also raises questions about collective memory and national responsibility. Germany has confronted its Nazi past more thoroughly than most nations confront their historical atrocities. Memorials, museums, educational programs, and legal proceedings have acknowledged the Holocaust and Nazi crimes. But individual cases like Hartmann reveal limits to that confrontation. Hartmann escaped. Thousands like him escaped. They died comfortably, never acknowledging their participation in atrocities. Their secret lives undermine the narrative of thorough accountability. Germany confronted its past institutionally, but many individuals evaded personal confrontation. Cases like Hartmann remind us that historical justice is incomplete, observes Dr. Melissa Werner, professor of transitional justice at Humboldt University, in an August 2025 reflection. We've done important work acknowledging Nazi crimes, but we also must acknowledge how many perpetrators escaped accountability. Both truths coexist. Germany has confronted its history, and many individuals successfully hid from that confrontation. The final ethical question concerns our judgment of Hartmann himself. He participated in atrocities. He escaped justice. He lived comfortably in exile, but he also lost his family. He lived isolated and psychologically tormented. He acknowledged guilt in his final letter. Does any of this mitigate his moral responsibility? No, guilt that remains private isn't accountability. Psychological suffering that doesn't include acknowledgement to victims isn't justice. Hartmann's confession letter, sealed for 47 years, served his psychological needs but provided nothing to those he harmed. He could have returned to Germany and faced trial. He could have publicly acknowledged his actions. He could have attempted restitution. He did none of these things. He chose comfort over accountability. That choice defined his moral character more than his private guilt. Yet human judgment must include complexity. Hartmann was neither pure monster nor simple victim. He made choices in extreme circumstances. He participated in evil systems. He caused harm. He also suffered loss. He lived with consequences. Understanding this complexity doesn't excuse his actions, but it provides fuller historical understanding. The danger is using complexity as excuse for exculpation. It was complicated becomes we can't really judge, but we can judge. We can acknowledge complexity and still render moral verdict. Friedrich Hartmann participated in crimes against humanity, escaped justice, and lived unpunished. That is morally wrong regardless of his personal suffering or private guilt. The Harz bunker stands as monument to that moral verdict. The facility he built to facilitate his escape is now preserved as historical site. German authorities announced in September 2025 that the bunker will become a memorial and educational center, documenting both Hartmann's escape and the broader phenomenon of Nazi perpetrators evading justice. The memorial will include the original office with its filing cabinets and false identity documents. It will display maps showing escape routes to South America. It will document forced labor used in Nazi construction projects, and it will include testimony from survivors and their families about the harm people like Hartmann caused. This memorial serves multiple purposes, explains Dr. Mendelssohn at the dedication ceremony announcement. It documents historical fact. It honors victims by refusing to let perpetrators remain anonymous. It educates future generations about how evil systems function through the participation of ordinary professionals. And it reminds us that the earth keeps secrets, but not forever. October 17, 2025. 19 months after construction workers first broke through into the underground facility, the Harz Mountains bunker opens to the public as a memorial and educational center. The official designation, documentation site for Nazi-era escape networks and forced labor history. Visitors descend the modern staircase installed through the original entrance tunnel. They walk corridors that Friedrich Hartmann walked in 1945. They see the office where he prepared his false identity. They examine photocopies of the documents, the Wilhelm Fischer passport, the ship manifest, the confession letter. They learn about the forced laborers who built the facility, their names recovered from requisition records, their fates mostly unknown. The final room in the memorial tour is the smallest. It contains 3 photographs: Anna Christina Hartmann née Brenner, Elise Marie Hartmann, Johann Friedrich Hartmann, the family that died in Dresden, the loss that motivated Friedrich's escape, the human cost that existed alongside his guilt. The memorial doesn't excuse Hartmann's actions, but it presents the full complexity. He caused suffering and experienced suffering. He participated in atrocities and lost everything. He escaped justice and lived in exile. He died comfortable and tormented. All of these truths coexist. Outside the bunker, the Harz Mountains forest continues its timeless cycle. Trees that were saplings in 1945 now tower 40 meters high. The landscape that concealed Hartmann's facility for 79 years looks peaceful, eternal, indifferent to human drama. But beneath that peaceful surface lies evidence of human choices, human cruelty, human desperation. The bunker is one secret revealed. How many others remain hidden? How many more facilities exist, unknown and undiscovered? How many more Friedrich Hartmanns escaped, built new lives, died unpunished? The archive work continues. Researchers in 7 countries pursue leads on other members of the escape network. The 12 suspicious identities on the Dorothea Manifest are under investigation. Argentine authorities have committed to examining German immigrant records more thoroughly. The Vatican has opened additional wartime archives. Slowly, methodically, the historical record is being reconstructed. Each discovery reveals that the post-war justice process, for all its achievements, was incomplete. The Nuremberg trials prosecuted major war criminals. Subsequent trials in Germany, Poland, Israel, and other countries held thousands accountable. But tens of thousands more escaped. They disappeared into displaced persons camps, acquired false identities, traveled to welcoming countries, and lived free. For every Adolf Eichmann captured and tried, dozens of smaller perpetrators died in comfortable obscurity. For every confession and acknowledgement, hundreds of secrets went to the grave. The scale of escape matched the scale of crimes. Both were industrial, systematic, and largely successful. This reality complicates the narrative of post-war justice. We want to believe that evil was defeated, perpetrators punished, and justice achieved. That narrative is partially true. Evil was defeated militarily. Some perpetrators were punished. Some justice was achieved. But the fuller truth includes mass escape, widespread impunity, and fundamental injustice. The Hartmann case illuminates this fuller truth. A mid-level Wehrmacht engineering officer, complicit in forced labor operations, built an escape route, executed it successfully, and lived 32 comfortable years in Argentina. He faced no trial. His victims received no acknowledgement. His death in 1977 closed the possibility of prosecution. Only the accidental discovery of his bunker in 2024 revealed the truth. What does this mean for historical memory? It means we must hold competing truths simultaneously. We must acknowledge both the successful aspects of post-war justice and its massive failures. We must recognize that institutional Germany has confronted its Nazi past, while also recognizing that many individual Germans successfully escaped that confrontation. It means we must continue investigating, continue revealing secrets, continue correcting the historical record, even when perpetrators and victims are long dead. Justice delayed for 79 years is still justice. Historical truth documented in 2024 about events in 1945 still matters. And it means we must educate future generations not just about the crimes committed during the Nazi era, but about how many perpetrators escaped accountability. The Holocaust happened. Millions died, and many of those responsible lived comfortable lives and died peaceful deaths. Both facts are true. Both must be taught. The Harz Bunker Memorial serves this educational purpose. 16,000 visitors in its first year, according to December 2025 statistics. Students, historians, families, tourists. They descend into the underground facility that Friedrich Hartmann built. They confront the complexity of his story. They leave with more questions than answers. Was Hartmann a monster? Was he a victim? Was he both? Was he neither? Just an ordinary man who made terrible choices in extreme circumstances. The memorial doesn't answer these questions definitively. It presents evidence and lets visitors wrestle with moral complexity. Perhaps that's the most important function. Not to provide easy answers, but to force confrontation with difficult questions. To prevent the sanitization of history into simple narratives of good and evil. To acknowledge that perpetrators were human beings who made choices, and that their humanity doesn't excuse those choices. Eva Hartmann-Schreiber visits the memorial in November 2025. She stands in her Greytunkel's office, looking at the photograph of Anna and the children. "I don't know what to feel," she tells Dr. Mendelssohn. "Sadness for what he lost, anger at what he did, shame that he's my family, relief that the truth is finally known, all of it at once." That emotional complexity seems appropriate. The past is not simple. People are not simple. Justice is not simple. The only simple truth is that secrets eventually surface, and history eventually demands accounting. The earth kept Friedrich Hartmann's secret for 79 years. The concrete bunker preserved his documents, his plans, his false identity, his confession. The limestone bedrock of the Harz Mountains held the evidence until construction workers accidentally broke through in 2024. How many more secrets does the earth keep? How many more bunkers exist, still undiscovered? How many more Friedrich Hartmanns built escape routes, fled to foreign countries, and died with their secrets intact? The Hartmann investigation suggests the answer. Many, probably thousands. The post-war chaos, the displaced persons crisis, the forged identity networks, the sympathetic escape routes, all of these created opportunities for disappearance. Germany's defeat was total, but the escape infrastructure proved robust. Future discoveries seem certain. Construction projects will breach more forgotten bunkers. Archive research will uncover more false identities. Descendants will discover more secrets in attics and old letters. The historical accounting will continue for decades, perhaps centuries. Each discovery will add detail to the larger picture. And the larger picture is this: the Nazi regime committed industrialized atrocities involving hundreds of thousands of participants across all levels of German society. When the regime collapsed, comprehensive justice proved impossible. Too many perpetrators, too much chaos, too many opportunities for escape. Some faced trial, many did not. Some lived with guilt, many did not. Some left confession letters, most did not. Friedrich Wilhelm Hartmann was one among thousands. His story matters not because he was unique, but because he was typical. A professional who participated in atrocities without becoming famous for them. An engineer who valued precision and planning enough to design his own escape route. A man who lost everything and tried to build a new life on a foundation of lies. His bunker in the Harz Mountains stands as testament to that story. 42 meters beneath the forest floor, concrete and steel preserve the evidence of choices made 80 years ago. Visitors descend into that preserved moment of history. They confront the man who built it and the decisions he made. And they surface back into daylight, carrying questions about guilt and justice, accountability and escape, historical truth and human complexity. Questions without easy answers. Questions that demand continued investigation, continued education, continued refusal to let the past remain comfortably buried. Because sometimes the earth keeps secrets for 79 years, but the earth also yields those secrets when pressed. The limestone cracks. The concrete chamber reveals itself. The documents survive in the dry underground air. And the truth, however delayed, however incomplete, emerges into light. Friedrich Hartmann built his bunker to facilitate escape. 79 years later, that same bunker became the evidence that ended his anonymity. The facility designed to hide him became the monument exposing him. Perhaps that's the final irony. He planned meticulously. He engineered his escape with the same precision he brought to fortification design. He succeeded completely, lived 32 years as Wilhelm Fischer, died comfortably, took his secrets to the grave. But the bunker remained, and the bunker remembered when human memory failed. And the bunker, in the end, told the truth he spent half a lifetime hiding. The forest grows above. The tunnel system extends below. And between them, at 42 meters depth, history waits in concrete chambers for the next visitor to descend and confront the complicated past.